Hi, this is Scott Miller. Welcome to my Top Performance blog. I have the pleasure this week of speaking with Mick Cooper, who is an internationally known author and trainer, especially in the field of humanistic and existential psychotherapies. Also a professor of counseling psychology at the University of Roehampton. Isn't that right, Mick?
That's right, Roehampton, yeah, South London.
South London. And I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. I know you have a lot of information, but I was particularly intrigued by this article that was released by you and one of my favorite people on the planet, John Norcross, and other colleagues. You and he surveyed clinicians, asking them about their preferences as regards therapy. And it's intriguing in many ways, much of which for me was hardly anyone has ever asked this question before. And then secondly, and intriguingly, your findings. So first thing I'd love to know is, why did you ask? Why did you care?
Well, firstly, let me say, Scott, it's a real pleasure to talk to you about this. And, you've done amazing work in the field. And, so much of this links into the work that you've done and that we're all doing to try and develop more kind of tailored therapies. I guess where it comes from is, as therapists, we obviously have our preferences and we've got our own preferences. And in my field, I come from mainly the person-centered field, and there's a lot of strong beliefs about what clients want. But a lot of those beliefs, I guess, come from our own experiences. I know for myself, for instance, that I've always wanted a kind of less directive. If I have a therapist who's telling me what to do and giving me directions, of like, I don't want that. I want space, and I want to, I just really want someone to listen, and I don't need that. But I guess the question was, okay, that's what I want. But if we really listen to clients and what the clients want, do they want the same things, or is there going to be different things emerging when we hear about what clients want? And that's what we found. So we did find that there were some pretty large differences between clients' preferences, particularly, the most interesting one I think was around directivity. What we found was that clients do want more direction, guidance. They want a therapist who's going to be more willing to teach them skills. And this was, Scott, this was difficult stuff for me. I'm a person-centered therapist.
I get it. I get
it. At heart. And I've always been an advocate of non-directive therapy. I've always believed that, the best is to really provide space for clients. But of course, a lot of that at the end of the day comes from me and what I need as a therapist. Sorry, as a client myself. And it felt really important to be able to stand back from that and say and listen to the voice of clients there. And it tells us something different. It tells us something, and I don't want to hear that, but Carl Rogers said the fact's always friendly. And even if it makes us feel uncomfortable and it's not what we want to hear, we got to be open to feedback. It's not, we need to open ourselves up to that. So it's been very interesting. It's fascinating.
And so people can, of course, read the study, which I'll link to in my blog and also post right along the bottom of the interview here. But when you say directiveness, you mentioned skills and guidance, and a brief search on the internet led me to find lots of sites. There were 6 million hits returned on Google, for example, and most of them, although I didn't read all 6 million of them, at least the first 3 or 4 pages of Google results were entirely negative or suspicious. One of the primary reasons was sort of what you say, that therapy is intended to help clients help themselves rather than to help clients directly. And the second one theme was on the order of, well, clients will resist our feedback anyway, so let's not give it. But you're saying something quite different. What do we?
Yeah. Okay, so what I'm saying is that, so firstly, the items that we had were things like, there was 5 items: focus on goals, give more structure to therapy, teach me the ability to deal with my problems, give me homework to do, and take a lead in therapy. Now, we call that directiveness, but of course, is that directive? Well, it kind of points in that way towards some of the maybe more CBT approaches rather than some of the more relational approaches. And that's what clients seem to be saying is their preference. Now, we also know from the work that Joshua Swift has done in his meta-analysis that clients' preferences are a particularly good indicator of outcomes, and particularly both clinical outcome. I mean, small change on outcomes. The latest meta-analysis in John's 2019 edited book. The big difference is around dropout, and that we find that where clients aren't getting the preferences, when the treatments aren't matching their preferences, then they are more likely to drop out of therapy. So we've got fairly good reason to believe, we're not looking here at what is effective, and obviously that's the next stage of the research. And I think one of the criticisms might be to say, well, this is what clients say they want, but actually what they need might be the absolute opposite. They might want directivity, and they might want structure, and they might want goals. But actually, that's an expression of their pathology. And actually what they need is something very different. I think empirically what the research tends to show is that engaging, or at least listening to clients' preferences, is really important. And I think there's also an ethical thing. Both you and I are very much feedback-informed therapists. I think we'd like to see ourselves as client-directed therapists. And I think that that really means listening. I mean, in fact, I've quoted you on this, that it means really listening to clients' preferences. It doesn't always mean doing what clients want, and it doesn't mean ignoring the things that we value or the things that we think are important. But it does mean being willing to listen, willing to have a dialogue, and really take that on board. So if clients are saying, in the main that they want skills and goals and structure, whether at the end of the day that's the right thing for them, what it certainly says is I think we need to listen to that, we need to be aware of that. And what we can't do, for instance, and again from a kind of more person-centered background, is to go in and assume that a non-directive approach or kind of just a relational approach, and of course I'm a relational therapist as well, is going to be right for every client. Your feedback-informed therapy, different clients need different things at different points in time. And I think the great thing about research like this, any kind of research, is it challenges us. It doesn't tell us what to do, but it challenges us to question our assumptions, think about what we thought was right, and actually maybe look at things in a different way and be more open to clients.
Well, certainly then, I suppose, given what you've mentioned, feedback-informed work could certainly help us align more with the clients. That's one thought. Second thought, as I listen to you speak, is I wonder if the findings that you've come up with will eventually prove to be mediated by the alliance anyway. So it's not about giving up the alliance. What you're saying is that accommodating client preferences, really listening to them, keeps them engaged. Otherwise, they drop out. They go away.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think there was some very interesting research by Rob Betty about 10, 15 years ago, which showed that in fact, the most alliance building and strengthening activities in therapy were actually quite directive ones. It was things like, setting goals, getting homework, all the things that from a relational standpoint, you might think, well, that's going to get in the way of the alliance. Actually, where you've got a client, particularly a client who's maybe depressed, who's struggling to stay engaged, that if you've got tasks and if you've got things for them to focus on, that can really help build the alliance. And Scott, sometimes the most unaligned thing can be to sit quietly in front of somebody and just give them space. We know from the research, and we found this particularly with young kids, they can find that terrifying. Somebody just sitting there, doesn't say anything, reflects a few things. From the therapist's perspective, that might be about forming a relationship, trying to establish connection. But I think, if that's not something you're used to doing, sitting in a room with somebody can be a really weird thing to do. Whereas if
highly confrontational.
Yeah, it really can be. And I think sometimes in the relational approaches we can miss, even with all the empathy and acceptance and congruence in the world, that not having that kind of structure of tasks and activities for some clients, and of course we're talking for some clients, what they need is that space to talk. But, none of these things are right for everybody. And I think, again, that's a key message.
And I'd be remiss, Mick, if I didn't mention the other finding that you highlight in the study, which had to do with emotional intensity, which also really intrigued me. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we found that overall therapists wanted more emotional intensity than lay clients did. But lay clients were still on the side of wanting emotional intensity. And that's what we found, that Overall in terms of their preferences, they did want emotional intensity, but it's just that therapists wanted that more. And I think a lot of therapists coming into it really wanted something intense, and the clients were a little bit more wary. So I think that's something for therapists to be aware of. But it was still towards that, wanting that emotional intensity.
Perfect. Wow, exciting stuff. And I
Yeah.
suppose here, getting the feedback, monitoring the status or quality of the alliance on an ongoing basis might be a way to gauge the amount of emotional intensity that people can tolerate, people are looking for, that will keep them engaged.
Yeah, well, we've developed a measure called inventory of preferences, which this study was based on. And the idea of it is to look specifically, and I think it can work well alongside the alliance measures and, the outcome measures, is to look at the kind of specific styles really that clients want. So that's one way of assessing it, and you can use it at the beginning of therapy and then 4 weeks and 10 weeks or whenever you want as a way of kind of monitoring how clients feel that the work is going.
Wow. And Mick, if people wanted to get a copy of that measure, is that possible?
Absolutely. There's pluralistictherapy.com, and the measure is free to use, and people are very welcome to use it, and just let us know, how it goes, because it is, it's been very interesting. What's interesting is when you talk to clients about their preferences, they're not uninformed. You wrote a wonderful book, one of my favourite books in the field, about the heroic client a while back. And it's really emphasising that we make a real mistake if we think that clients don't know what they're talking about. When clients say things that we use the form, and of course it's the dialogue that's the important bit. It's not about, okay, we'll do 2 of this and 4 of this and 5 of that. It's about having that discussion. And when clients are talking about things like wanting structure or wanting learning, it's often, the position is one of, well, I've been struggling with this problem for a long time, and it'd be useful to get some outside input, or I want some more emotional intensity, because I know even though it's difficult for me, I know that I've got to get those feelings out. So what the tool does, I think, as with all these, and as I know with the RS and SRS, it's about the dialogue really that follows them.
Right.
Being able to have these conversations with clients about what it is, what they want, and then being able to monitor that and keep on talking about that.
And while I have you sort of captive here, on video, and I don't want to put you in the middle of a huge political battle, but I guess I do, how does this fit with the current certain treatments you have to use with certain disorders movement that is so big, regardless of where I travel? Is there a way to integrate these two, or is this a battle where one has to win and the other has to lose? I mean, where do you see this?
So it's a complex one, and I think it fits in lots of different ways. I mean, I think, the issue of preferences, I mean, evidence-based therapies, as John will talk about, are very much defined in terms of, clients' preferences, even in the APA definition come into that. And I think that's the key to it. But preferences are on a lot of different levels. So of course you've got treatment preferences, which are at the kind of macro level in terms of what therapy that you want to get.
Right.
I think what we know on treatment, what also is important about preferences, and again, John's great in emphasising this, is that probably the key to it is about strong preferences. That for a lot of us, for a lot of clients over time, there's not really any strong preference, that they're happy to go with what therapist wants. But some clients, particularly I think those who've had past experience, we're also finding in our research that, if you've had past experience of therapy, like a lot of our clients do, then you're more likely to have particular preferences, understand preferences, know what they are, and have strong preferences. Some clients are going to have strong preferences, and some clients are going to have strong preferences against the mandated the evidence-based intervention. And of course, when we talk about evidence-based, we're not saying it works for everyone. What we're saying is, on average, it's been shown to work or effective, cost-effective. But it doesn't mean that particular clients with particularly strong preferences are not going to suit and are not going to do well in those so-called evidence-based therapies.
Yeah.
And are more likely to drop out. Research that shows that. So I think, clearly there's got to be options in terms of the treatment that people have. And one of the lovely things about preferences, and particularly working with client preferences, is that it brings a lot of creativity and openness. And one of the interesting things we found a while back was that therapists who were more pluralistic, who were more kind of mixing in, or very similar, I think, to feedback informed therapy, were more satisfied in their work. And I think, it doesn't surprise me because it's more creative, you're
Yes.
drawing all these things. And, I'd like to think that's the future of
Yeah.
therapy rather than very fixed manual. But, I'm sure there's a place for all of these different approaches.
Yeah. Well, I when I meet therapists, I have to say that most of them I meet secretly are pluralistic. They may toe the organizational or management line in meetings and such, but in the room with clients, they're a pragmatic bunch, and that's where I really think your research has added a great deal to the field. Hey, Mick, thanks so much for talking with me about your findings, and I look forward to what else you come up with in the future.
Thanks, Scott. Real pleasure.